Now, I would like to introduce to the next session, which is a creative keynote, and which will be where we'll be discussing on the expanding imagination, seeing things through the very different perspective. And I would like to call upon stage Thank you, sir. So for the next session, I would like to call upon stage Mr. Rajendra Prasad, Chairman, NIT Technologies. I would also like to call upon stage Mr. Devdutt Patnaik, who is an author, speaker, illustrator, and a mythologist. Welcome, sir, please.
Good afternoon, friends. Spent the last 10 minutes with Mr. Patnaik, and I've become hugely more curious about what he does and what he thinks about. Just a minute of introduction, then I'll let him tell his stories. He comes from the field of medicine and served briefly as a consultant for Ernst & Young. He's a prolific author. He's written 30 books and almost 500 articles. He features on TV shows, and he came on TED Talks in India 2009 and has over 1 million views. His session on myths that mystify. He's got had very interesting titles in the work he's done. He's been the Chief Belief Officer at Future Group, and I was trying to figure out what that means, and I guess I'll be sitting here and trying to figure out that along with you. But he is also a culture consultant to the Reliance Group, teaches at ISB and IIM Ahmedabad. So he's, to me, a very versatile thinker. And I think he, from our point of view, we were keen to understand the belief systems of people, various players in our cybersecurity world, why people do what they do, and what beliefs do they come from. So with that brief introduction, I'd like to ask Mr. Patnaik to present his thoughts, and then of course we'll open it for Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I have the slides? So I thought I should ask the fundamental question why security exists. I think security, the assumption is that people want to steal what you have. If people didn't want to steal what you have, then why would I need security? So one of the fundamental things that one needs to remember is a question that people often ask: who came first, the police or the thief? I think the thief came first. That unfortunately gives him a first mover advantage. And we have to keep that in mind. So I decided to ask the question, why do I steal, and just go deeper with that idea. So first, a little basics. I always do this before I start a session because these words are used so casually that we often don't understand what they mean. So my focus of my work is basically mythology and its role in management, its relevance in management. When I use the word mythology, most people, your mind immediately fires up a very old definition which is no longer valid, It's an old definition which means the study of false stories. That's a 1950s definition, not acceptable in any academic session as anywhere in the world. A more appropriate definition of this word is stories that tell us how cultures think. So through these stories you figure out how cultures think. So you get the collective wisdom of different groups of people across the world. So if I want to understand the collective wisdom of America, stories from America tell me the collective wisdom of America. The stories from Europe tell me the collective wisdom of Europe. Especially stories which are considered sacred enough to be transmitted from one generation to another. So these are stories. So here is the stories are Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Puranas. These have been around in India for over 2000 years. And they've been transmitted, built on like a knowledge management system, going and continuously accruing data over time. And certain patterns are consistent in this, which is very unique to India. They are not seen in other parts of the world, which perhaps gives us an understanding of how Indians think. So another way of looking at mythology, it is the map of the human mind. And Indian mythology is the map of the Indian mind. European mythology will be the map of the European mind. So I'll focus today basically using ideas from India and focus on about 2 or 3 ideas. As I said, it is related to security, and I thought I should write about security. Security doesn't make much part of my business book, which is Business Sutra. It's there, but not as explicitly as I'll be stating it today. So let's first go to very common, who are the security people in mythology? Right? So there are 2 security people that I came upon. One is 2 characters, twins known as Jai and Vijay. We have heard these names from Hindi films, but they have their origins in the Puranas. It's from the Bhagavad Puran and from the Vishnu Puran, and they are doorkeepers. So if anybody over here has travelled to Tirupati Devasthanam, or you have travelled to Puri in Odisha, at the gate you will see the images of these 2 Vishnu-like images. They look exactly like the deity inside the temple, with one fundamental difference: they have fangs. They have fangs, so they look almost like gods, but they'll have fangs. You have to look very carefully, and they are like these frightening creatures, because doorkeepers are always frightening, right? So anybody who is responsible for security has to have the big moustache and looks lethal, and otherwise you don't consider him fit for the job, right? If he's gentle and dancing around, you will not take him seriously as the chief security officer. You want him to be this broad-shouldered brute who does not let you pass without a permit or a scan, and makes you scan everywhere you go, and makes you feel so restrained, but it's all for your own good. The story goes, unfortunately, Jai and Vijay have a very tragic story. The story goes that they are the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, which is the abode of Vishnu. And the story goes that one day 4 Brahmin boys called the Sanata Kumars wanted to enter Vaikuntha. So they came, and the security guard said, you cannot enter, Vishnu is sleeping. So please wait, come after some time. And they came after some time. And again the security guard said, wait, he's sleeping. They came again after 3rd time, and again he said he's still sleeping. This time they thought they are members of the Indian bureaucracy. So the file is not moving, so they got very angry, and they said, and what all good rishis do, these Brahmin boys, although they were children, they had learnt the art of cursing. So cursed the rishis that tumhe shraap lagta hai, that you will no longer be the doorkeepers, but you will be born on earth, experience mortality. And they say that in the first life you will experience mortality as the asuras. So they are born as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. In the second life they will experience mortality as Rakshasas. So they are born as Ravana and Kumbhakarna. And the third life they will respond as mortality as human beings, Manavas. So they will be born as Shishupala and Dantavakra. And this story basically, and when, naturally the security guards get very upset. They go to Vishnu and say, we were just doing our job. This firewall was created because you told us to create it. Yeah, you approved, you signed the contract. हमने कुछ नहीं किया. You know, and they got very upset. Then he said, we were doing a duty and we are being cursed because we did our duty well. And Vishnu said, yeah, that's true. That's called collateral damage. So you have got collateral damage, which all security people have to face. Damned if you do and damned if you don't. You know, if there is no breach happening, how do I know you are really effective? Right? And if a breach happens, you are responsible for everything that went wrong. So it's this tragic situation that all security leaders have to go through. You want once in a while something dramatic to happen. Otherwise, how do you justify the role? So you need to tell how many breaches happen. So these poor guys, and then Vishnu says, don't worry, I will come and rescue you. And one of the reasons why Vishnu takes the avatars, whether he is born as Varaha or Narasimha or is born as Ram or Krishna, all this is only to liberate the security guards. In other words, business exists so that security business can boom. Yeah? And the more the business is successful, it means more your business is successful because I have more valuables to protect. Yeah? So the best thing that happened to us was the IT world, and now cloud has come. That means you all are in lottery time. So the next 10 years are glorious because every aspect of my existence is somewhere in the cloud and you better protect it. Yeah, and you can frighten the shit out of me and saying, but you know, you never know, they will know what you're doing in the toilet today. And that's what is happening right now, right? Because the towers are measuring every movement of mine, and if I'm sitting in one place for a long time, most probably I'm on the commode. And that the IT systems today can find out. Very, it's transparency, but not the kind of transparency I want. So that's Jaya and Vijay, the security guards of the gods. But you see, even the demons have security guards. So when you go to Lanka, the guard is a goddess called Lankini. And rather misogynist, because, you know, gods seem to have male security guards, and Ravan wants a female security guard. But the fact is, you have to ask yourself, are you Lankini or are you Jaya or Vijay? Because you don't ask, and that's not the job of the security department to check who are you securing. Right? Because you might get a great contract from Pakistan. Will you say no? Or you might get a great contract from Arab countries, or who knows, tomorrow ISIS will give a great purchase order. It's going to happen. The world is changing, the borders are changing, and that is why ethics are becoming complex. Because security, for whom and why? Because security guards are for the rich and powerful to keep their wealth inside, which means those on the outside are not the rich and powerful. They are the poor. They are perhaps the helpless. Are they the villains? And I think that's what these stories are trying to reveal, because at this, over here, the security guard of Vaikunt is keeping away the Snatakumars, who are no threats at all, but came at the wrong time. In this story, which is from the Ramayana, where Lankini is not letting Hanuman enter, he's keeping the good guys out. He's keeping Ram out. She's keeping Ram out. So over here, the security guard is still doing the duty. Only the one inside and outside, the ethics and morality on either side of the wall, we don't know. We can challenge, we can question. So it brings a very fundamental problem of the security guard. Who are you securing? Because a criminal will also have a firewall. We have all heard of bitcoins, right? And we know who use them most. And these are the ideas that suddenly the language, that mythology changes. So it's not a simple idea as that. The simple, by just showing you 2 slides, I have taken you into the world of the gods and demons, but actually I have taken you to the world of ethics, of morality, of gender. Look at the gender divide very clearly. But Lankeshwari is called, she is called Lankeshwari, the goddess. She is also seen as a divine being because she is protecting. She is the goddess of Lanka. And these ideas are something that we need to think about. So this was one idea that I wanted to share with you from mythology of how security is being seen. The idea of holding and securing a space. My duty as a security person is to secure the place, not to question the ethics and morality of what I am protecting. And this will always be there. This is that you have to live with it. We would like to believe that what is being protected is sacred. But we will never know whether we are Jaya or Vijay or Lankini. Now let's come to the second part, the more fun part, which is the question, why do I steal? Why do I steal? What motivates a person to break a lock? And that's the question we'll ask using a little bit of mythology, a little bit of evolutionary psychology, and try to see, and you'll realize there's only three things in the world. To understand this, let's look at this picture. So look at this picture carefully. And you'll see it shows an animal, two animals. There is a deer and there is a cheetah behind the deer. There is the predator and the prey. If I were to ask you, or if I were to ask anyone in the world, who do you want to protect? What is the most likely answer? I want to protect the deer. Because the moment I look at this picture, my mind tells me the deer is bechara, is the victim, and the cheetah is in all probability the villain. And we want to protect it. That's how we typically see the world, right? There is the villain, there is the victim, and I would like to be the hero. I want to be the one who protects. So that's the way it is. But now let's look at this same model of the predator and the prey a little carefully. So look at it carefully and now look at an image. There is the deer. Deer is also terrified. I will be destroyed and killed if I'm attacked. Now, both are scared now. If you ask them, each one will feel the other is lucky. For example, who is luckier between them? If you ask the cheetah will say the deer is lucky. Because I get food once in 10 days, once in 20 days. But the deer gets food every day. So the deer is lucky. You ask the deer who is lucky. The deer will say the cheetah is lucky. Because when the cheetah may eat once in 10 days, but when it eats a full stomach. But a deer can never ever eat a full stomach. Because when the stomach is full, it cannot run. And it never knows when it will be ambushed. And therefore the one who has nothing can eat a full stomach. The one who has a lot has to starve himself. So now you go to the gyms. So every time you go to the gym and you see people running on the treadmill, you know who has a lot. So who needs more security? Who needs more protection? The cheetah or the deer? Pavam kaun hai? Who is tragic? Who is the victim? The hungry, starving cheetah or the rich deer? And look at the more wealth it has, the more grass there is around the deer, the more threatened it gets, right? Because the more grass there is, the more likelihood that there are going to be more cats hiding in the grass, right? So when you meet the rich and powerful, How do you see them? Let's say you're going to meet a minister, or you're going to meet some of the richest industrialists of our country. You think that, oh God, they look so frightening, they have got these jaws and claws. We think they are like this, running after money, they're greedy, extremely greedy people. That's how we are told, right? They're greedy people. But you know how they imagine themselves? This is how they imagine themselves. As little deers dancing like Bambi. Trust me, this is true. And that is why they look so terrified. The startled look in their eyes all the time. You just have to go to a page party. It's a gathering of deer. Everybody thinks it's a pack of wolves. Actually, it's a gathering of deer. What does the deer want? The deer wants security. So I want security. In the old days, in order to feel secure, what did I do? I built walls around my farm and my field. These walls are called, for example, it is called Durg. The word for a fort, the fort is Kila, Gad, Durg. From Durg comes Durga, another mythological character. And suddenly you realize that these are concepts. These are concepts which are what we call in English jargon. 2000 years ago, they just turned them into goddesses. In order to survive, I need Lakshmi. I also need Durga. When I don't have a job, I need a job. When I get a job, I want a better paying job. When I get a better paying job, I want job security. Guarantee chahiye. So large companies, look at this. When you get married, what are you told? What are the gifts you are told? May there be peace and prosperity in your life. Peace is Durga. Prosperity is Lakshmi. Or look at a simple thing. You go to buy a washing machine at Chroma, one of those digital stores. First thing you'll say is value for money. Am I getting all the things, good quality things? Am I getting good stuff? Is there value for money? Lakshmi. Once you get it and you sign the deal and you sign the credit card, the next you think about is warranty, guarantee, after sale service. The deer inside you wakes up. And suddenly you realize the deer is inside you and the cheetah is inside you. The predator and the prey, both are inside you. And therefore, if I'm looking at someone who's trying to steal my wealth, how do I look at that person? Do I look at that person as the tiger which is attacking me for food? Does the person imagine himself as the deer which needs protection and sees me as the tiger, the evil tiger, and therefore wants to declaw me by destroying my firewall? So all those hackers in those countries that we consider to be our enemies are really doing Desha Seva. They are Desha Seva. They are doing, it's their duty to protect us, or protect themselves from us, because they see us as the predator and themselves as the prey. And how do we see ourselves? And this conversation is very critical to understand in psychology. Because the moment you look at the world in terms of predator and prey, you remove the words like hero, villain, victim, which has a hierarchy about it. But the moment you see predator and prey, or rather a better way of looking at it is who is hungry and what is food. The hungry is running after food. The food does not want to become food. And these are the fundamental, these two things are the fundamental desire which makes me steal, break the wall. But then comes the more complex thing. So first layer was Lakshmi, the second layer was Durga. Let's go to the third layer, which makes us human. Humans are 99% animals. So yes, the deer is inside me, the cheetah is inside me, but I'm not a deer and cheetah. I'm more than a deer and cheetah. I'm a human being. What does this mean? What does it mean at a relevant level? It means that I am an animal with a larger brain. I have a larger brain. And this large brain allows me to do something that no other animal can do. It allows me to imagine. It allows me to imagine. Imagination is what makes us human. Now, what does imagination do? Think about it. A deer, look at the deer. Deer gets frightened when it can see a tiger, smell a tiger, or hear a tiger. Humans can imagine a tiger all the time. So we are more scared, so scared that we have de-risking departments. And as long as there are de-risking departments, the security business is safe. Because I can always imagine another attack, and yet another attack, and yet another attack, and yet another attack. Let me give you an example how deep-rooted the psychological fear is. How many of you all have watched Star Trek? Trekkies? Okay, good. Look at the old Star Trek which came in the 80s. The original Star Trek which we watched as children on television. And look at the new Star Trek movies which are coming in the last 5 years. Observe the difference in pattern. The original Star Trek was all about exploring new worlds. You are continuously going to explore new worlds, new civilizations, with a prime directive that don't destroy them. There is something to learn from them. Don't interfere in their affairs. Just go and learn. So this Star Trek is going all over the world trying to figure out things. It's looking at the world with curiosity. The new Star Trek movies are all about feeling threatened. The first movie shows you the planet Vulcan exploding. The second is talking about Earth being attacked. So nobody is going to explore the world. They are busy protecting their house. It tells you the psychological shift in the Western world. The great psychological shift is happening. Rather than exploring the world because they were in the good times and they were the powerful beings, now they are in a state of siege. Look at the movies that are coming. Look at the television. The zombies are attacking. The aliens are attacking. The animals are attacking. Dinosaurs have come. And what is the worst thing that is going to happen? Electricity will go away. They just have to come to India regularly. This assumption कि सब कुछ चला जाएगा. So the developed world, the land of the privileged, sees itself as the deer. And the people whom we call as them terrorists and who we imagine to be the cheetah actually see themselves as the prey. And that is the psychology which is shaping world politics today, world economics today. And that is why when you talk of organizations like ISIS, one of the most powerful tools in their hand, by the way, is social media. That Facebook, that Twitter, that Vimeo, which was meant to connect you with your high school buddies, is being used to recruit people who are willing to kill themselves for a cause. And why we would like to psychoanalyze them and demonize them? We forget how they imagine themselves. What is their subjective truth? How do they imagine themselves? And how do we imagine ourselves? And this is what our scriptures talk about. So when they use the word Brahma, creator, they are not referring to objective material reality. They are talking about subjective reality of the mind. What do you create in your mind? How do you imagine the world? You are Brahma and you create your own reality, which is Brahmand, the egg laid by you. And what do you do with this egg? You enter the egg and take shelter in it. It becomes your cocoon. So the egg that you have created becomes the cocoon that locks you. This is the idea of Brahma and Brahmand. That is what they're explaining through the idea that humans have imagination. You imagine, and what does it do? One of the most powerful things is this. If you understand this part, you understand the magic of psychology. You see, this is a bird looking into a mirror. If you look at ancient art, when you see the image of Shiva, you will always see the image of Parvati, and she's always holding a mirror with her. And it looks like a cosmetic mirror, but mirror is a very important symbol in Hinduism. When you do, if you are a Vaishnava and you are doing Krishna Puja and all that, after the Shringar is done, the deity is shown a mirror continuously. Why do they show a mirror so many times? And this is the reason. You see, a mirror, when an animal looks into the mirror, it asks 4 questions. Will that eat me? Is that a predator? Can I eat it? Is that a prey? Will it steal my food? Is it a rival? Can I produce babies with it? Is it a mate? Predator, prey, rival, mate. PPRM. That's all it does. If no, 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 it doesn't care. It walks away. The bird doesn't care. But what happens when human beings look into the mirror? What happens when human beings look into the mirror? See, this is Narcissus from Greek mythology. Do we see ourselves or do we see our imagination of ourselves? I look into the mirror and I think I'm diamond. Then I go to office during appraisal time and meet my boss. In my self-assessment, I say diamond. He looks at it and says, nahi, 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 plastic. And he'll prove it showing you the bell curve. The HR bell curve, the most evil instrument on earth. And then you go to your wife and you ask her, what do you think? Diamond, plastic, diamond, plastic. Your heart is beating fast. She looks at you and says, no, not diamond, but not plastic either. So you wonder what it is. And she says, cheap plastic. That is the sound of sorrow. Now think about it. Now step back and look at it. Diamond, plastic, cheap plastic. Which is real? Which is objective reality? One is my imagination. One is my boss's imagination. One is wife's imagination. That is the power of imagination, how it wreaks havoc with you. Because you're continuously wondering how others see me. लोग क्या सोचेंगे मेरे बारे में क्या सोचेंगे मेरी औकात क्या है औकात is a very powerful word. If औकात didn't exist, Mont Blanc pens wouldn't exist, Mercedes cars wouldn't exist, Audis wouldn't exist, because when you buy those goods, you are not buying the pen because you want to write. It is want you tell the world कि मेरी कोई औकात है. देखो मेरी गाड़ी Mercedes है, Mont Blanc pen है, I go to eat in these 5-star restaurants, I have a private jet, I have a gold commode. I must be something. But now imagine this in the world of hackers. Whose wall did you breach today? तेरी औकात क्या है? Which fortress did you destroy? Which country's security system did you break? Now that becomes a video game, right? In real life, in real time. And that's frightening. Young kids playing video games, only thing is they're dealing with real countries, real issues, real data. And no clue what they're doing, because औकात ये in the hacker community मेरा नाम रोशन होगा. Because I entered the Pentagon and came out and they didn't know about it. I have the president's file in my hand. It's a game. Leela. And that, because we all imagine ourselves, we want to be powerful like this tiger in front of this lion, we all imagine ourselves powerful. Why do we imagine this to be the symbol of kings? The lion is the apex predator. It is also on top of the pecking order. In other words, we want to dominate. That is our notion of leadership and kingship. Ki I will dominate. मैं दहाड़ूंगा और लोग डरेंगे. So essentially in our imagination, we want to be predators. Look at the symbol. Across the world, the symbol of the king is the lion. So kings want to be predators. They've used the predator as their symbol. And we don't realize the psychology of it. So प्रजा का मतलब हम लोग क्या है? बकरी. तुम वाघ तो हम बकरी. But the reality of life is this. You can do any symbol you want. I can imagine myself as the lion. But this is the reality of our lives. सब पिंजरे में है. It is called standard operating procedures. It is called template. It is called your identity card. इसके बिना आपकी औकात नहीं है. And the best way to humiliate someone is when you're walking towards a building and the security guard says, "Tu kaun hai?" And he will be the CEO of 10,000 conglomerates. And he's coming out of his Mercedes with a Mont Blanc pen. And the guy is like, "Sir, duty hai, sir, aap kaun hai? Kisko milne ka hai? Kyun milne ka hai? Duty kya hai?" Have you seen that? In all the gated communities across our country. And it's so humiliating. औकात वहीं पे गिर जाती है. Finished. That security guard is your security officer. Little world, I get you are playing some of those roles. Apps are playing those roles because without that guy is important. However humiliating he may be, without him, you don't feel safe, right? Your children, all depends on those young men and women standing there, guards, scanning everybody at every hotel, touching every part of your body, and you're feeling extremely violated. But करना पड़ता है because security चाहिए ना sir. औकात is what plays on both sides of the security wall. So you're protecting not just property, you're also protecting people's औकात. And that's the whole game, this yearning for validation. All of us want validation, we all want to be somebody. The security guard over there does not like being humiliated and shouted at, every time being told, "Pata hai main kaun hu?" Even the senior politicians of our country, when threatened with arrest, say the same thing, "Pata hai main kaun hu?" It's the language of Delhi and the universe. I think it's in Delhi, right? In the Gurgaon play, that man was shot dead, the toll guy. Yeah, Mane sir, that horrible incident happened. The guy was just doing his job. He was Jay and Vijay or perhaps Lankini. But he suffered. And that's the line of fire. You are in the line of fire. But that line of fire is important. Without which, these are the borders, the border security guards, the army. It's just that the world has shifted into the digital world. The virtual reality is more real than real. That breach on that computer is far more dangerous than a bomb hitting Delhi and Bombay. We don't realize how important and dangerous this is becoming. And you are rendered irrelevant all the time because every time somebody enters your house, it is what happens in Juggi Jhopadis, right? Anybody can just walk up and one day destroy your Juggi Jhopadi. Buildings will always be there. Buildings and metros will go around the buildings, not around the Juggi Jhopadi. And that creates rage and anger. And rage and anger feeds into the desire to attack. So imagination is the third goddess, Saraswati. Saraswati. Ras means fluid. Sa means good fluid. The fluid which is always flowing. Imagination is flowing. You cannot control it. No matter how hard you try, you cannot control the imagination of people. So why do we steal? We steal for these three goddesses. Either Lakshmi, wealth, I want money, simple, I want to crack your credit card, debit card, account, I want your money, simple. Durga, I want to breach your walls because I see you as a threat to my security. And I steal because of Saraswati, because दुनिया को दिखाना है कि हमारी भी कोई औकात है. हम आपको तोड़ सकते हैं, कभी भी चाहिए तो. I can dominate you and put you in place and say, don't act too smart because I know where your data is and I have access to it. These are the three reasons we steal. These are the motivators, drivers. How do you remember this? Very simple. LSD. Lakshmi, Saraswati, Durga. Mythological LSD, don't think anything else. I can see young college kids thinking of, chemicals and Ekta Kapoor movies. This is LSD. How do you remember? This is what makes people steal. I think we need to understand this because more and more as your industry is growing and becoming digital, it's becoming increasingly psychological. And that's the world you're living. It's no longer a digital world. It is the world of the mind. You are entering the world of mythology and you need to study its maps. So, buy my books. With that, I come to the end of my session. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Do you want to take a couple of questions? Would you like to take a couple of
Yes,
questions?
sure. Do you have time? Sorry.
Okay, now this is a tough subject, but let's have a few questions. 4 or 5, yes, please.
Can I have the slide back on, please? Because I use the slides to give the answers.
Please identify yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
In your
Can you identify yourself?
Huh?
Just identify your name. and
My name is Shalini Mehra. I am with the Ministry of Petroleum. You said the hacker is also a prey and the hack is also a prey.
Yes.
Then who's the predator?
No, when you are the prey, I am the predator. When I am the prey, you are the predator.
Also, it's relative.
It's always depending on the point of view of the person looking at the situation. And the mistake that we do is we assume that the person hacking us is a predator. But in their imagination, they see themselves as prey. So in my imagination, it's a predator. But in its own imagination, it sees itself differently. Only when you do this do you empathize. And when you empathize, you think like them. I don't know how, if you do forensic science, for example, they will always say, think like the criminal. मतलब उनके लिए सहानुभूति रखो. Only when you feel sorry for them will you understand how they enter the system. Very difficult to do that because we have judged them, right? We don't like them. But unless you have a sahanubhuti for the other side, you will never understand how they function. And therefore, you will not be good at figuring out what are the ways in which they enter your system. So that psychology is what I'm talking about. Yeah? Thanks.
Hello.
Yeah,
My
go
name is
ahead.
Vijay Kumar.
So I'll take this and then I'll take yours.
My name is Vijay Kumar and I work for Tata Communications. I think you have psyched us all. In the sense that you've shown some analogy, a particular analogy of a deer and a tiger and tried to weave around the concepts of security. If you had shown some other analogy, it could be some other way. So I tend to get a feeling, there's no question, but it's a kind of a reaction to what you've been saying, that I tend to get a feeling that by some clever twist of some analogies from here and there, you've tried to somehow conjure up a connection to security in the real world as we see it today, which I think there is an element of, I don't know what I should use here, because
So you're entitled to your opinion.
to me it seems to be it's actually you are creating our imagination. There's nothing to do with reality. That's
Okay.
what I'd like to say here.
Okay. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
The examples that you took, all of them, are actually comparison between two different species. None of them are same species, one eating the other. So if you come to human beings, when we talk of attacks, it's about same species. And so I think the distinction has to be brought between need and greed. So as long as it is need, there is no problem. I think the world has to work towards the need. The problem becomes when the greed arises.
Yeah.
So when one has excessive but he wants more. I think you brought in somewhere. But in case of animals, mostly it is the need, I think.
See,
Greed factor is less.
Yeah. See, that's the reason I use the word imagination. right? The third element becomes important because America, for example, uses 15 times more electricity than every Indian. The per capita usage of electricity in India, in America, is 15 times that of India. Is that need or greed? You ask the Indian, he will say that is greedy. If you don't need 15, you ask the American, he'll say, but I need it. Who decides? Is it an objective parameter or a subjective parameter? This is the source of conflict. Yeah. That is why Saraswati, the imagination, because my imagination determines these boundaries. I was telling sir, we are having a conversation over coffee. Look at the concept of property. You protect property, right? Is property a real concept or an imagined concept? Because property, in nature there is territory. Every animal has a territory, you mark it, but they can't bequeath it to the next generation. There is no concept of, they can't pass it on to their children. But humans create property. And we say, this is mine, and my children, whether they're deserving or not deserving, should have it.
Inheritance. Yeah.
Inheritance, right? Which can be looked as unfair. Like an intelligent person will say, but I'm working so hard, I'm not inheriting. And a stupid guy, but father was rich, therefore he's going to get it. This creates notions of unfairness, unjust, on the basis of a concept called property. So imagination, that's why the third image which I showed, the third goddess, the imagination plays a critical role. You know, we have been conditioned until 1970, imagination was not important in humanities. When people studied the humanities, measurable objective criteria was only considered modern. But more and more people have understood the value of imagination because I imagine myself as a victim. And this complexity is becoming conversations in global forums. Especially with terrorist attacks happening, with attacks happening, the simple story is the terrorist is bad and we are good. Simple story. We are in the need space, they are greedy. This conversation is becoming, because if you see it from the world, from the other person's point of view, greed is on this side.
Absolutely. I think just point. Like you said, property, when we talk of individual property, the countries have created their own property.
Yes.
So if you make the country boundaryless, probably it ends up like a survival of the fittest.
And see, that's where, because the tribal societies, for example, had collective property, not individual property. Collective property was there, but we decided somewhere along the line individual property versus collective. So that property itself has many, but these are all concepts. And concepts are in the mind. And if 10 people agree, then it becomes, like America becomes the property of the British crown or the Spanish crown. Nobody asked the Native Americans their view. It was survival of the fittest, but through legislation. So these are the ideas that are emerging in the world today. Psychology plays a very important role, especially when you are trying to understand notions of property. Because without property, you can't understand security. Ye mera hai, the concept of mine. Animals don't have this concept of mine. I'm using a human language. People will argue, don't use the human language, but I have nothing else. This concept, and therefore more and more, the higher you go into understanding the world of security, forensic psychology becomes important, studying pathological sciences, you're trying to understand how are human beings thinking. This becomes a critical thing. So understanding that, so the point over here is when we're talking about ethics, morality, need, greed, we have to factor in human psychology. And I think the more we factor in human psychology, the better we become at handling our issues. Yeah?
Thank you.
So okay, now the last two questions, because I know that everybody is waking up to this philosophical concept and getting deeper and deeper. So we'll take these last two questions and I'll leave it for you people to interact with Dr. Patnaik.
I'm Ashok Jain from UP Police.
Yes.
So you have touched on three very powerful ideas: validation, comparison and victimhood. I just want to share something. As long as we validate against the external world, now that itself is a debatable concept because it is related to your self-worth. And secondly, validation against external world involves comparison.
Yes.
Now comparison, when you compare, most of the time we end up discounting ourselves.
Yeah.
The next step is going to victimhood. Because when you compare and you don't find yourself up to the mark for whatever reason, whether you live in a juggi or in a skyscraper, you got a victimhood. But again, I come back to your talk. You talk about Brahma and Brahman. If I am Brahma, and if I am creating my Brahman, there is no victim. So, if you remove the victimhood out of the equation, I think things will be better. As long as the modern civilization looks in terms of cause and effect and victimhood, these problems will go on continuing, and we will never be, like we'll be always chasing the mirrors. Thank you.
So, okay, last
I have a small submission here. Sir, you referred to the fact that Saraswati as a goddess, in this particular context, represents our imagination. I would like to humbly differ there. Saraswati, as we have understood it, is stands for the power of discrimination, number one. And imagination, if I remember, the word for imagination which is used in Indian philosophy or mythology is vikalpa, that is a unicorn or a sky flower or something. Now we come to the logical implications to what you have said, sir. One, if every problem which is there is a result of our imagination only, and if it represents only that, then we don't have any respite from the evils of the world. As I see it, it is not rooted in imagination, but it is in less of discrimination when we are framing policies and being unable to move towards the idea of distributive justice. You know, whenever we are allocating goods and resources, framing policies, so that is something which is more important. And as for the other part of it, sir, viewing it as a prey or a predator, the Veda also says, Sangachadvam, Samvadadvam, Samvo Manansi Janatam. हम साथ चलें, साथ बढ़ें और हमारे मन भी एक हों. So I think we have different strands in our philosophy. It all depends on how we understand and interpret it. Thank you so much. By the way, I am Saurabh Kothari. I am additional SP in Rajasthan Police. Thank you.
The word imagination does unnerve us. It's a very disturbing thought, because we come from a school training, you know, we were trained in science, and we were always told imagination is a bad thing. But we don't realize that because humans can imagine, we come up with hypothesis. Therefore, we come up with thesis. Therefore, we come up with knowledge. Knowledge owes itself, as we know it, to imagination. Because unless you can imagine something, smartphones didn't exist. Somebody imagined it. Today, they exist. So the seed of the smartphone is in somebody's imagination. It's something that we just can't. Right now, somebody is imagining something else. And because they're imagining it, they're going to work on it. And therefore, from the imagined world, the real will emerge. This idea of imagination is very disturbing, because all I have access to is my imagination. So when we say Brahma and Brahman, I have access to my imagination. I don't have access to the imagination of millions of people around me. That is terrifying. And as long as there is terror, we need someone to secure us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think from the questions we can see that the subject becomes deeper and richer. For myself, I'm taking away one simple lesson, that every hacker maybe has a sad story. And rather than shooting him down and getting emotional and probably making a mistake, you can get the emotion out by empathizing, may probably get a better sense of how to deal with the problem a little more dispassionately. So that's about one thing which I take away. But clearly, I think these are important, deep issues, and all of us surely are triggered by what you said, and remembering stuff grandmothers told us when we heard their stories, forgot much of it, only to come back to realize that life goes in circles, there are lessons to be drawn, there are conclusions to be made, and our own ideas and identities and assumptions and beliefs to be reconciled so that we can take the appropriate action. So with that, I'd like to thank Mr. Patnaik for a very deep and rich discussion, and I hope that you take this with you as we come to the end of the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.